Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, the impeachment, I'll have to say, fiasco still continues. What's your read on it? My read was 2 weeks ago, a week ago, when we were talking and conversing on the on Carnivore Bites. I thought it was heading really south for Trump. And I'm going to have to say right now, I'm not really thinking that way.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to be picking up any steam. We're seeing the basic pattern of what has been the Democratic investigations. When they get a document on paper, they go nuts. It's, oh, okay, we've got him, we're going to impeach him, we're getting him out of office. And then they start actually talking to eyewitnesses who know what's going on, and the investigation falls apart. You saw it with the Mueller report. We're seeing it here again. Trump is taking a hard line. He said, look, I am not cooperating with you. I've had it.
Which I think is a good idea. What do you think?
I think it's a good place to make a stand, because every other impeachment in U.S. history, Jackson, Clinton, Nixon, all of them, started with a vote in the House to start the impeachment process. That's simply how it goes. Pelosi has refused to call for that vote. Without that vote, the investigation lacks authority.
Yeah, I would agree. And that's why he shouldn't. I think it would be held up by the courts, because why should he participate?
And I think, and this is sheer speculation, if Pelosi calls for a vote, it's pretty much going to go along party lines. Most, if not all of the Democrats are going to vote, to go ahead with the investigation. The Republicans are going to vote not to. If they have this party line vote, it gives Trump the narrative that, well, look, this is just the Democrats trying to get me out. It's not a bipartisan investigation. And if any of the Democrats vote against the impeachment process, and there are actually 3 or 4 that might, it then gives Trump the narrative, well, we have a bipartisan group saying, no, don't impeach. So Pelosi, playing politics, doesn't have a lot to win with the vote, and yet she doesn't really have the authority to do these things without the vote.
I would agree. I think that she listened to Schiff. He promised her the world. This is what I believe, and it wasn't happening.
Well, I mean, there seems to be this mysterious evidence that they claim to have that never seems to materialize.
Well, that's Schiff, and I think she bought it.
Well, it's not just Schiff. Richard Blumenthal has been claiming he had evidence against Trump for 2 years now, and yet he hasn't been able to make anything materialize.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of hardline Democrats who have been claiming all along, yes, I have the proof, we can impeach him, we can get, and yet when it goes forward, they always fall short because they don't really have this evidence.
Yeah. I'm thinking this is working for Trump. I mean, I know some of the polls say 50% of America is for the impeachment. I'm not feeling it.
Well, the poll I saw this morning, I believe it was either Gallup or Quinnipiac, I forget which one, had 45% in favor of impeachment, 49% against impeachment.
Okay, that's reasonable.
So it's pretty well split, although even that, the media is trying to spin it, because when they were promoting the story of this, they actually said a majority of people now approve impeachment. 45% is not a majority. Doesn't matter which side of the story you're on, 45% is never a majority.
45% is always 45%, as far as I know, yes.
Yep.
True. The NBA is in the news. Maybe you want to talk about that?
The general manager of the Houston Rockets tweeted his support for the protesters in Hong Kong, and the Chinese government went nuts. How dare he? How dare the NBA say these things? Um, right now, the Brooklyn Nets and the LA Lakers are actually in China to play an exhibition game. There's a whole bunch of events that were planned because there's a big NBA fan base in China. The NBA came out and said, we stand by the freedom of speech. He was absolutely right. He has the right to say this. China shut down the NBA events. The NBA's business partners in China have all suspended their partnerships. China is trying to play hardball with the NBA because somebody said something in favor of Hong Kong. And to the NBA's credit, they're standing up to China.
I think that's very, very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I think it's really kind of because we really haven't stood up to China, and I wonder even though if most people that are in the NBA don't like Trump. I'm not so sure that him standing up to the Chinese hasn't changed the temperature a little bit in America regarding China. What do you think in terms of rolling over?
I think it has. I mean, we've rolled over for China for decades. Both parties, Democrat and Republican, nobody stood up to China. China joined the World Trade Organization, flouted its rules, absolutely ignored international law, and nobody did anything. Trump was the first president to go after them. And it's brought up the fact that all of these things that China does, stealing our intellectual property, they have the excuse me. They have the practice that if a business wants to do business in China, they have to partner with a Chinese company. They can't do it themselves. And those partners generally steal intellectual property and steal the property of the American company. This has been going on for years. They flood the market with cheap goods.
Isn't it true? It's kind of like Karl Marx or Lenin said they'll sell us the rope to hang them, and we've kind of done that with the Chinese, haven't we?
Really, we keep buying Chinese goods. We gave them
and
the economic power to do this.
And giving them technology.
Well, yeah. We did. It's not so much that we gave them technology; they stole our technology.
No, they stole a lot. But at the beginning process, they were a third world country. American corporations went to China, wanted them to manufacture stuff cheap, gave them the technology to do that, and yeah, they stole a lot. But we also gave them a lot. Now,
what you just said about third worlds is actually the key. Because China is now the world's second largest economy. They're going to eclipse us in the next 10 to 15 years, but they still want to be treated like a third world economy.
That's exactly it. Yes, they want to be coddled. They want all the advantages of that. Yes, special treatment, which I question. We did it, but I question if it was really warranted. And now they still want that. I agree 100%. Last thing on the bites for this week, Biden. It looks like Elizabeth Warren is kind of ahead of him in the polls. I have to think that his star is really setting. I think the impeachment of Trump has hurt him tremendously because even if you're totally dying-the-wool bias, come on, really? I mean, he obviously, did some funky stuff with his son, and I think a couple more debates, I think it's pretty much goodbye. What do you think?
Yeah, Warren has officially become the front runner. She has overtaken him. There have been a couple of studies that showed that the Trump impeachment actually did a lot of damage to Biden. Because
that's what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah, even if you believe that Trump should be impeached, now a lot of people are going, well, wait a minute. Biden actually said that he forced this prosecutor out. This is sort of hinky. What was going on there?
Yeah, I think that I'm not so sure someone else isn't going to jump in. What do you think? Kind of to close it out.
I don't know. I mean, at this point, um,
I don't see Elizabeth
very.
Warren being able to beat Trump in a national election. Do you?
I don't think Warren can beat Trump, but I don't know that there's enough strong candidates out there that somebody can jump in at this point and overtake her.
Agreed. It's very interesting. Again, I love your predictions. Right now, where do you see Trump in terms of winning the presidency? Like at one time it was like almost 70, and it went down to almost 50, around 50. What is it now, do you think?
And now I think he's sort of hovering around 65%.
I would not argue with that. Good analysis.
It's still his to lose, but a lot of it is going to depend on the economy. And that's something else, actually. Yesterday, Jay Powell made statements stating that, yes, the economy is slowing down, but it's nowhere near a recession. The Fed is watching stuff. So they are actually starting to take action. They're looking at how many cuts they need to make to interest rates, where they need to be buying bonds to keep the economy going. And I heard an interesting statistic earlier today that the American economy has never gone into a recession the year of a presidential election.
Did not know that.
It's always, if goes into, it's always the year before. So if it doesn't go into recession by January, Trump will have the economy on his side during the election.
Wonderful analysis. Wonderful segment. We'll do it again.
See you next week. You've been listening to Carnivore Bites, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch us every week at exvadio.com/podcasts, on the iHeartRadio app, the Apple Podcasts app, the iTunes Store, Spotify, and wherever you find podcasts. You can also catch us live every Friday at 4 on WESU FM 88.1.